I now give the floor to Mr. Khaled Khiari.
Mr. President, as the Secretary General just stated, today's meeting takes place against the backdrop of an alarming escalation of the war in Ukraine. On the night of 23rd and 24th of May, the armed forces of the Russian Federation launched a massive strike across Ukraine, reportedly deploying as many as 90 long-range missiles and 600 drones. Among the weapons used was the so-called Oreshnik intermediate-range ballistic missile, which targeted the city of Bila Tserkva in central Ukraine. This marks the third known instance of the use of this weapon by the Russian Federation in Ukraine. At least 5 people were reported killed and at least 112 others injured across Ukraine, with the heaviest toll in Kyiv. The city's more than 2 million residents endured over 7 hours of explosions, impacting dozens of residential buildings. According to UNESCO, more than 30 cultural sites were reportedly damaged in this latest wave of attacks. The diplomatic residence of the Albanian ambassador and the compound housing the United Nations Resident Coordinator and several UN agencies were impacted by falling debris from strikes in central Kyiv. Fortunately, no UN staff members were injured. Attacks continued into this week, impacting civilians across southern and eastern Ukraine. Russian Federation authorities have also reported rising civilian casualties from alleged Ukrainian strikes. On 25th of May, 2 civilians were reportedly killed in the Belgorod and Bryansk regions. Mr. President, we remain deeply concerned over the recent announcement by the Russian Federation of plans to conduct, and I quote, consistent and systemic strikes against Ukrainian defense enterprises in Kyiv, as well as against decision-making centers and command posts, end of quote. This announcement followed reports of an Ukrainian drone attack on a college building and dormitory in the Ukrainian city of Starobilsk that is presently occupied by the Russian Federation. We strongly condemn all attacks on civilian and civilian infrastructure. Such attacks, wherever they occur, violate international humanitarian law. They must cease immediately. Civilians must be protected. Mr. President, the United Nations and our humanitarian partners continue to operate under extremely dangerous conditions to reach civilians in need. In the past 2 weeks, United Nations humanitarian personnel, humanitarian partners, and assets have come under attack on 5 occasions. This is unacceptable. Humanitarian personnel and clearly marked humanitarian missions must be protected at all times in accordance with international humanitarian law. The United Nations stands ready to work with both sides to ensure safe, sustained, and unimpeded humanitarian access to communities in need, wherever they may be. Despite the challenging conditions, the United Nations continue to support recovery and reconstruction efforts, as well as human rights monitoring and advocacy. The United Nations is also focused on efforts to facilitate the safe return of deported and forcibly transferred Ukrainian children, including through the Secretary General's Special Representative for Children in Armed Conflict. Mr. President, in its 5th year, Russian Federation's full-scale invasion of Ukraine continues to exact a profound toll, disrupting global trade and economy, deepening regional and international divisions, and eroding trust in the multilateral system. With each passing day, diplomacy is delayed. The threat to regional and international peace and security deepens. An urgent return to dialogue and negotiations remain imperative. The United Nations will continue to fully support all meaningful efforts to that end. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Khiari for his briefing.